So this is the agenda for this CES session. So I'm going to be covering the parts lists, reference sets, automation tools, drafting settings, and tips and tricks. So the objective is at the end of this session, you'll learn some of these automating features that you can use in your drafting workflows, perhaps some things that you haven't seen before or haven't thought to use. So we'll be picking apart some of these tools and how you can incorporate those in your day-to-day drafting activities. Okay, so the first thing I'll tackle here is parts list, and this is usually what one of the first things you'll set up when you're creating something like an assembly drawing, right? So I see a lot of customers spending a lot of time creating their parts list manually, entering these informations, all the data manually, so it breaks all the links connected to your models. So here are some of the capabilities of the parts list feature in NX. So one is you can create multiple parts lists. If you need separate ones, you can have those created. You can set it up where you update those automatically or on demand. You can lock, renumber, sort them. You can create associative balloons, so you have those be automatically placed to specific views or multiple views. And then the key thing here that I'll go over is the attributes section. So importing part attributes, bringing in some useful information that you've already created in your models and bringing them into your drafting environment. And then lastly is once you've created your layout, your format, you want to go ahead and save that for future use via templates. Okay, so this is the first demonstration I'll cover is creating a parts list, something similar to this on the bottom left there, where we have the NX material being called out, weight, which is very popular if you want to see the weight for each individual subcomponent, how to bring those in, how to change the formats, and then we'll go over how to add a new attribute such as vendor information. Right? So again, we're leveraging attributes rather than going into each cell and manually updating those that information. Okay, so for this first demonstration on the parts list feature, I'll be using this assembly here. So this is just a fixture assembly, something to inspect, something like a shaft for run out. And so I have my models pretty much set up. I now want to go ahead and start creating my drawing. So like I said, the parts list is one of the very first things you'll create. And so what I'll do here for my first step, bring this down. I want to create my ISO view, so I'll place that here. And I want to go to my parts list feature at the top. And you'll see this is the out-of-the-box table. Right? It's just pretty basic. Your PC number, your part name, and quantity. Here, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and show balloons. And I have the option to select a specific view in my drawing. So I'll click on this one. You also have the option to show on all your drawing views if you'd like. And so once you're done with that, you can go ahead and place it. So now I want to go ahead and edit this table. So first thing I'll do is I'll right click and hit settings. And this is where you can access your parts list columns, your callouts, your workflows, all that good stuff. And so if I go to my column section, if I go to this line item here, I can select add new column, and you'll see it'll add a column to the right of that cell I have selected. Now all I have to do is click on the attribute feature and look for my material callout and my mass callout. The first thing I'll do is I'll select material. And if you have a material assigned, this will pull that from your properties, your component properties, and this will pull the same nomenclature from your NX library. So depending on how you have that set up, you may have to adjust that, or if if it aligns with your nomenclature, you can have that called out there. So also, a good thing about this is it'll tell you if there's some components that don't have a material assigned to them. So this will also contribute to some of those weight callouts. So I want to change my title, my column title, to just material. And so here, that should update, so just material. And now I want to go ahead and add the weight column. So I'll just click on add new column. I'll change this to weight, and I will change my attribute to weight. Okay, so it looks like I have my weight information. I'll adjust my title, maybe add some units in here. You'll see that it brings in, all these decimal places. So if you go to callouts, or I might have to go one level above. So let me hit close. I'll highlight the column, go to my settings. So now I'm in my weight column here. And if I go to my text, here you can see all the different kind of categories, all the alignment settings, all that good stuff. Here, let's go back to my weight column. Let's adjust this, and there should be an option here for my cells. Let me highlight this, right click, settings, part cell, dash. Okay, here you go. So this first cell, or sorry, this column here, that should be a text, or sorry, that should be a number. So here, once you change your category from a string to a number, you'll have your option to change the decimal places. So in this case, I just want 2 decimal places. I don't care for leading zeros, right? And I can go ahead and toggle that. Okay. So at this point, I have pretty much what my material attributes pulled, my weight attribute pulled, and now I want to create a new attribute. So vendor is a common column to add. So I see that added all the time. So let's go ahead and do that. And so instead of manually updating each cell here, right, the more efficient way to do this is highlighting all your subcomponents, right-clicking properties, and this will give you the bulk edit environment. So now I can go ahead and create a new category or a new attribute for all my subcomponents. Here, I'll just call this vendor. That's my category. My title will be vendor. My data would be a string. And I just want one for each cell. So I can hit OK. Right. So now I can go into this environment and add an attribute to each subcomponent. So again, I'm making it parametric. So I'm just bringing in the attribute to your parts list. I'm not going in here and manually entering it to just the drawing. I'm applying that to the subcomponents themselves. The nice thing about this is if you're connected to Team Center, you can go ahead and link those and have that attribute paired to your Team Center environment. Okay. So here I'll just label some. I'll just call this machined. Right, and you can go down the line and add these in a more efficient manner. Okay, so now I can go back to my settings environment, go to my column, look for my vendor attribute, and that will populate what I just created, right? So that's pretty efficient. That's nice. One more level above, or to go a little bit further here is these item numbers don't align to the dash numbers. So one thing you want to do as well is automate that sorting process. So you can go ahead and let's do it from here. You can go to your parts list feature and you can hit sort. And here you can select your part name. Right? If you have part number, you can go ahead and sort it based on your part number. Right? Let's go ahead and change this. So now I can have my numerical order sorted that way. Right? Everything else gets tied. So again, making your life easier to organize all this, adding component data, component properties to your parts list. And then once you have all this set up, you can go ahead and right click and save this as a template. Right, so now not only can you use this for future uses, you can upload it to maybe a site folder and have people pull that. So you're making your life easier and other people's life easier. So this great handy tool. Right, you can see those balloons were populated in my ISO view. That's very easy. Looks pretty good in terms of organization here. One thing you can also do is change your balloon types as well. So if you go into your settings, there's an option to update your balloon settings as well. All right, so you can go in here and change those. Okay, so that was kind of a deep dive there into the parts list and setting it up from scratch, organizing your columns, adding attributes, and then creating a new attribute. All right, let me jump to the presentation here. Okay, so now moving on to reference sets. So a lot of folks aren't really familiar with reference sets and use cases for this. So incorporated this as part of the drafting techniques presentation here. So reference sets, some use cases here are, one is to filter component objects, right? Having specific reference sets, groups for your datum features, your sketches, your solids, right? That's one way to do it. A more common way is to represent a component in the assembly with either an alternative or a simpler representation, right? So an example here I have on the right is you have the same component, but you have two different configurations of that component. You have an as machined variation, and then you have an assembled variation where the machine model has pilot holes and your assembled model has the match drilled hole sizes. Right? So here, there's a use case where you have two different solids and you want those represented differently in your drafting environment and in your assembly environment. Right? There's also, I've also seen where you add datums to a reference set. So that datum helps you in assembling and applying constraints at the assembly level. So you may see here some datum reference sets. Right? This example here covers a specific drafting reference set where we want to bring in points from the model to our drafting environment so we can go ahead and apply datum targets. So that's what we're seeing here on the bottom right is these points coming from the model environment and being accessed to the drafting datum target features. All right, so that's what I'll be showing here. I have this simplified just skin, maybe it's an axis panel, and as you can see, it's overlaid geometry. One of them has a pilot hole, the other one has the assembled match drilled hole. And I have a drawing here. In this drawing, I have my skin component. And if I see I have a drafting reference set and an assembly reference set. So if I zoom in, you can see if I toggle to assembly and I update my view, rather let me update the entire drawing, you'll see the hole sizes change. Right? So those are configured there. And what I want to do is I want to add my points to this drafting reference set and bring it into my model views. Right? So if I jump over to my model, I have 3 points are called out for datum C here. And what I want to do is go to my reference set. And instead, let's go ahead and have this just be the detail part. It's just the detail part. I want to create another one specific for drafting or datums. Here I add my detailed solid plus my 3 datum points. Okay, so those are 4 objects in here. I hit close, and if I go to my drawing environment, I can now see detail, assembly, and then drafting. So drafting should now include those points I created. You can see those in here. And now, again, leveraging reference sets, instead of recreating those points, instead of trying to dimension those manually, I can go ahead and simply start creating my datum targets based on that geometry. Okay, that's perhaps my C1. This could be my C2. And this could be my C3. Okay. So that's just an example of how you can use reference sets, something less common, but now you can have this in your toolbox for future use, future consideration. Okay. So those are 2 things there. Now let's talk about some less common features, but some really good tools for automating your workflow. So auto dimension isn't very commonly used in NX, but there is a feature for it. It's called feature parameters. Auto aligning those dimensions, that's called distribute annotation. So those 2 features are hidden, but you can search for them and you can use them. Also expressions. So I see a lot of times that companies want to add stock size definition to your drawing environment. So we'll look at how you can do that via expressions in some ways, so you're not manually entering your stock size, right? That leaves some room for error if you're editing your part, maybe increasing the size down the road. There's no way to control that in the drawing unless the person who added it in there remembers to change it. Right, so there's risk in there. And then auto check. If we have time, I'll go over a checkmate example. If not, we have a dedicated checkmate CES session that covers it. Okay. Okay, so let me jump into the drawing. And I'll go back to this fixture assembly. And if I go to sheet 2, I have something pretty much laid out already. So what I'll show here is creating the top and right view for this dash 14 part, and using the auto dimension tool to apply those dimensions. Okay, so here I have feature parameters. I just added that to my ribbon, but you won't see that unless you search for it. So I'll search for feature parameters. And this is what the menu looks like. The first step is to select which features you want to add. And then the second thing is which view you want to add those features to. So here I'll browse to the feature 114, And you'll have to be somewhat familiar with your model tree, right? So here the options are your sketches, your whole features, all that good stuff. So unless you know where those dimensions are stored, you're probably just guessing. But because I know what sketch I created this profile from, I can go ahead and select that sketch, then go to my view and select the view. So now if I hit OK, that should update. Let's see. Let's try that again. Feature parameters, 114. Let's click on this first feature, then this second here. Let's click OK. Looks like there's some hidden features, so that might not show. Okay, let's try that here. So feature parameters, 114. Here, let's get those holes. Let's add the view. And there you go. So this one worked. So here, let's just delete that. Now I have my 2x hole call out. So it looks like something's hidden in this view here, so it's not letting me. Let's try that one more time. Features, let's try these two sketches. Let's try that. Dimension style, imported view. Alrighty. Yeah, there might be a bug on this one here, but the idea is use the feature parameters to bring those into your environment. It could be my my layer settings that aren't bringing it in here, so I'll have to look that up there. The second thing is once you have those auto dimension parameters in there, you can distribute those and organize some of those dimensions. So in this case, it doesn't really make sense because there's just one dimension here. If you click on that, that will do its best to go ahead and organize your annotations. Okay, so let's try that on this view. Distribute annotation, okay, right? And so here, based on the settings, it wants to go ahead and create it here. So you might want to play around with those settings as well, see which ones make sense based on the text sizes, right? But that's also an option. It is hidden. I believe it might get retired soon, but it's worth trying it in your workflow, see if feature parameters or the auto dimension tool is a viable option for you. Then the distribute annotation tool as well. Okay, so the third thing here is stock sizes, right? So expressions for stock sizes. So I see that being a common question is how do I get stock sizes either in my parts list or a separate table? And so what I'd like to recommend is starting with the model using expressions where possible. So if I go to my 114 component, for example, 114, that should be, okay, so what I want to do is I want to create a bounding body for this part. And I already have one here set up. Let me go ahead and hit close and delete those expressions. But to get stock sizes, a very useful tool is this bounding body feature. Right? So if you click on, depending on what your starting stock material is or form is, you'll have a block or a cylinder. Here I have this filtered tip body. So this gets me my my stock size, right? If I want to add offsets, I can go ahead and add an offset there, a 1/4 inch offset, etc. In this case, I want everything nominal, so I'll click OK. And then my next feature here, because I don't want multiple bodies in my NX environment. I can go ahead and delete that. But what this does is it creates an expression for you that you can carry to your drafting environment. So if you go to Tools, Expressions, you'll see these three expressions that are created from my bounding body feature. Right? So the nice thing about this is if you have a standard of assigning a variable to all these stock sizes, so let's call this X, Y, and Z, or you can call it STLTL. Right? You have that pretty much standard across all your subcomponents. What this allows you to do is go into your, let's see, I might have a couple already created, so it's clashing. But what this allows you to do here is to bring in already standardized variable name that you can now leverage and bring into your drafting environment. So in this case, I can go ahead and create a tabular note, perhaps with 3 columns there, and I can label this part number, part name. Let's call it part number, part name. You can also bring it into the parts list as well if that's something you want to do. Let's call it stock size. And let's just enter this manually for the sake of time here. What I can do now is I can bring in that attribute settings here. I can bring in that expression, that attribute, based on my parameter. Let's bring this in. Okay, so if I go into expressions here, this will ask me to link a specific part. Right, so you'll have to look for that part. This is 114. Right, so now I have all my parameters, and I can say I want to bring in my X by Y, right, and then bring it in this way. So again, thinking just ahead here, you'll want to set all these expressions up, maybe have a standard bounding body feature, delete feature for all your subcomponents. So once you get to this level, you can bring those into either a tabular note, or even better, you would have an attribute associated those 3 expressions and then bringing it into your parts list. Right, so again, kind of just some ideas there to get the ball rolling on some automation there. Okay, so I'm running a little bit over time here, so I won't show the checkmate example here, but basically, you'll go into your checkmate environment. There's already some out-of-the-box tests for your drafting tests, so that's really great tools for you to just leverage and do some quick checks for outdated sheets, outdated views, maybe some broken dimensions. Okay, so here's a quick summary of what we went after. Is you want to go ahead and start thinking about standardizing your templates, your defaults, standardizing your parts list so that the next time you create a new drawing, you have that already laid out for you. Right? If you have your parts list template, all you have to do is bring that in and then go ahead and select your components. If you have your attributes already defined, predefined, makes things a lot easier. And again, that stock size expression, that can be very valuable, not only for expediting your parts list creation, but also making sure you're not releasing out-of-date drawings based on a manual input. So most of this is prep work, creating your reference sets, creating user-defined views, layers, attributes, expressions, and then using some of those automation features like we talked about, feature parameters, the distribute annotation, checkmate tool, all good things to throw into your workflow. So that is my last slide. I'll open up the floor to any questions now.
So we do have one question. So that is there another way to filter objects in a view besides using reference sets?
Yeah. So there's a couple different options. There's, let me show my screen. So you can either set up reference sets or you can set up layers as well. So one thing you can do here is perhaps on the skin drawing, if you have a layer dedicated to these points and that geometry, what you can do is you can go into your, you can select that specific view, go to more, and then click on layer visible in that view. All right, so now you can see I have layer 1 visible. Perhaps I have all my points in layer 2, so I can make that visible and maybe hide everything else. All right, so you don't have to use reference sets necessarily to filter objects. You can use it to represent different alternatives to the part. Okay. Then the second thing is view dependent edit. It's not really recommended because it breaks everything. It breaks the link to your views and dimensions. But basically, you can also do view dependent edit to add or delete objects. Right? So if I want to go ahead and maybe delete a hole, right? That's not best practice, but technically you can go ahead and do that there. Right. So the good thing is the checkmate test has a test for any objects that were altered using view dependent edit. So if you want to make sure no one's accidentally modifying the drawing of the component, you can do that check to validate that. So yeah, two different options there.
All right, that is it for questions then. Thanks, Eduardo.